When you're prepping for a language test and you get to the speaking section, have you ever really stopped and thought about what it is they're actually measuring? Because there's this really fascinating paradox, this huge gap between how we're told to speak in a test and how people, even native speakers, really talk. So let's dive in and break it down.
Okay, let's start with a little thought experiment. I want you to picture someone in a big, high-stakes English speaking test, and they're about to absolutely ace it, get a perfect score. What do they sound like in your head? Are they super smooth, totally flawless? Just kind of hold on to that image for a second.
Well, it turns out the major international English tests have a very, very specific idea of what that perfect speaker sounds like. And, some might even say it's a little unrealistic.
And look, I'm not just making this up. This stuff is literally written into the scoring guides for tests like IELTS and TOEFL. They're on the hunt for speakers who are perfectly fluent and coherent, using all this precise vocabulary and a full range of complex grammar. The ideal candidate speaks in these beautiful, complete sentences and this is the key part, effortless to understand.
What this really boils down to is that these tests are built around a literate model of speech. It's like they want you to talk the way you would write a formal essay. All polished, perfectly structured, and neat. And this is the exact model that millions of people are trying to imitate to get a high score. But is that how anyone actually talks? All right, so let's flip the script. Let's compare that ideal, polished speaker with the messy, surprising reality of how people, even highly educated native speakers, talk every single day. The linguist Heidi Riggenbach points out that when students first start analyzing real, live conversation, they're often completely shocked. They sometimes even describe fluent native speakers as sounding uneducated, because real speech is just full of these hesitations and self-corrections. And why is that? It's because we're literally creating language on the fly under a ton of cognitive pressure. So we have this massive gap, right, between the perfect world of the tests and the real world of conversation. Well, in the testing biz, this whole challenge has a name. It's all about defining the construct.
Now, the construct sounds super academic, but it's just a fancy way of asking a really simple fundamental question: what are we actually trying to measure here? Is it your ability to have a casual chat with a friend, to give a formal speech, to argue a point? You have to nail that down, or your test is basically meaningless.
And this brings us to the most important point of all. That casual back-and-forth conversation, the way we use language probably 99% of the time, the big tests have decided that is not their construct. They are not trying to measure your ability to have a normal chat. So, if they're not measuring that, what on earth are they measuring?
So how do these tests actually handle this gap in the real world? Well, they create their own special measurable definition of good speaking, one that actively rewards all those ideal features and, you guessed it, often punishes the real ones.
Just look at how this table breaks it down. On the left, you've got the trademarks of real natural speech. Hesitating, repeating yourself, fixing a mistake mid-sentence. But in the world of the test, those exact same things can be seen as flaws. They're red flags for lack of fluency or control, and they can literally cost you points.
And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the paradox. Think about it. A language learner who can catch their own mistake and smoothly correct it without losing their train of thought, that's an incredibly advanced skill. That's someone managing speech production in real time. That person should be considered a high achiever, but a test might actually mark them down for the very skill that proves their proficiency. It's wild.
Okay, so what do we do with all this? As language learners, as teachers, as people who just love linguistics, what's the big takeaway from all of this?
It really means we have to understand that a speaking test and a real conversation are two completely different games, with two totally different sets of rules. In a conversation, your goal is to connect, to get your meaning across, to build a relationship. But in a test, your goal is to demonstrate proficiency. It's to produce that smooth, error-free, complex language that ticks all the examiner's boxes. So maybe we need to stop thinking of these tests as measuring authentic speaking skills, because they're not. What they're assessing is your ability to put on a very specific kind of performance. It's a type of monologue, a genre of speaking that was basically invented for the test. And once you truly get that distinction, it changes how you see everything. Not just the test, but the amazing complexity of real spoken language too. So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. If our biggest, most important language tests are rewarding a type of polished speech that almost never happens in the real world,
then what does a high score truly represent? It's more than just a language question. It's a question about what we choose to value. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching.